Alright, so I decided to get a little video while we're driving. Currently driving through the I-80. Taking a trip, so my last video, taking a trip across the country. Not too many states this time. Last time I went out, I do commercial photography. Right now, my trip, they got me going about 150 Raising Cane's. Got about 30 at Columbia Sportswear. Just got to revisit a few Dash Marts or DoorDashers that I had previously gone to. As I said, those stores were a little interesting. I always assumed that DoorDashers would go to the stores, pick up their stuff, and just take it. No, but I'd seen that they have, their own markets where these DoorDashers just go pick up their stuff and leave. Which, honestly, every time I go to those stores, I don't know if any of y'all are DoorDashers, and if you are, I'm sure you guys have experienced this. So, since I go and do work in the buildings, not everything I do is commercial photography. I said I also do spatial mapping, so the 3D virtual tours. We create CAD files for renovations and whatnot, asset management, virtual stores, whatever they want to use it for. But most of the times, when I walk into a Dash Mart, I try and always find a back door and knock on the back door because, I'm going to 10, 20 stores a day, and I need to be quick about it. Sometimes I work from 6 in the morning till midnight just to get things done. I know my wife hates it. She's always like, or a lot of people always tell me, you're going to fall asleep on the road, you're going to end up crashing or something like that. But I always tell them, I'm going to be out on the road for 3-4 months. I got to get my job done. The quicker I'm done, the quicker I can get back home, and the more I make. Our job is commission based. I get paid for as much as I do, so it's in my best interest to get as much done as I can. And so I was just saying, when I get to these DoorDashers, I try not to knock on the front door, but sometimes I have to. And the worst part is, I get there. I'm wearing my safety vest. I'm wearing, a reflector hat. I got my tools with me because sometimes I gotta, take pictures of the AC units, get the information off of it, serial numbers, or sometimes in the air handle, which would be on the inside. So I think it'd be pretty obvious, when I get there, it seems like, hey, this guy's going to do some work. But no. I'll knock on the door and I'll see these people, they're walking by getting groceries and they see me, and I'll even tap on the window and these people will be like, just wait a moment. And I'll try to explain, I'm not a DoorDasher, I was sent by your corporate. I need to get a job done. And I got to say, I can understand it, why some of these people are so pissed off, because I've seen too, in both sides. There's so much negativity on both, like the Dashers and the people giving the stuff to the Dashers. The Dashers, a lot of Dashers will get there and they'll start knocking on the window. Hey, I gotta get my order, I gotta go. And these people are like, hold on, I'm still trying to get the order together. And when I knock, I can understand. I'll be like, all right, I'll wait, but I'm just trying to let you know, I'm not a DoorDasher. I'm not trying to pick up any orders and stuff like that. And but the worst is people yell. They'll start yelling. They're mad. Like I don't think I'd ever be able to do that kind of job. As it is, it stresses me out sometimes when these people are like, they're getting mad, and I'm just trying to do my job. I understand you got to do your job, but I tell them, I'm not a Dasher. I'm not trying to piss you off and be like, hey, I gotta go. It's like, it's not like that. But unfortunately, you know what? My respects to whoever can do that kind of work. I cannot. I would end up getting in a fight with somebody, and it would not end up well. It's too much stress. I'd probably have a heart attack by the age of 40. And I'm getting there. I'm gonna turn 35 next month, and it's too much. So, as I was saying, with my job, it get a little bit difficult. And last week I was saying, apart from the asset tagging, we also do So the spatial mapping, it's last week I was going to a bunch of Verizon Wireless's, just their corporate stores. We're getting the layout of the building. So, and I tell them, I have to go to every last room in this building, including the safety and the telco. It's actually crazy the amount of access I get to some buildings. Last year, I went to AMD, the company that makes the computer processors and all that chips. I guess there was a buyout for two of their offices, one in Longmont, Colorado, and one in San Jose, near in Los Gatos. And most of the people, people that are doing their office jobs, their badges, they only get access to the offices. The laboratories they have in the back, most people don't get access to that area because there's a lot of. So I want to say that the San Jose one was where they do a lot of their development, like right before it hits mass production. They say, okay, this is where, these are the final steps. We already have a full, a product ready to test and all this kind of stuff. So, I guess there'd be a lot of possible espionage. And with my job, and they're well aware that I got to go to every last room in the building, every last electrical closet, every back room, every laboratory. So when I did this job, it was, I was actually surprised. They gave me full access badge. First 2 days, I had the security guards, or I had an escort with me the first 2 days. And by the third day, I'd say I'm a friendly guy, most people end up trusting me after a day or two. So they would say, just go on your own, do what you got to do. And as I'm driving, as I'm walking through these buildings, the kind of things that I see where, I remember I saw this giant barrel full of processors that were defective. So, they're going to go back into they scrap it, take out all the precious metals from it. I'd say, I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, if I could extract all that gold right there, how much would I get? I'm sure, quite a little brick of it. I used to, when I was younger, I would always try and, do all that gold extracting, turning it to aqua regia and purifying it. Although I'd say I wasn't the best at it, and it was probably a little bit dangerous. I had a little shed where I would, have sulfuric acid, nitric acid, and a bunch of other stuff, not properly ventilated. I remember one time when I was extracting the entire week, I had the worst headache because, I was younger, I was stupid, I wasn't really thinking about my health in those days. Nowadays, completely different story. But so, as I'm going, I'm going through the building, I'm seeing all this crazy stuff, and I remember that the guy, one of the guys in their maintenance said, be very careful what you're doing, sometimes I had to remove ceiling panels to find air handlers, in their server rooms, they have massive cooling units, cooling towers, so, I'd be going through to find the air handlers inside the ceiling. It's like, do not get dust on things, especially in their laboratories. Dust can ruin, obviously they have, this location didn't have those, they're not actually printing them. I know they have clean rooms where you go through a laminar flow chamber, get all the dust off and then put a suit on. It wasn't that type of building, but they still said, be very careful. They're like, they said a janitor the other day left the water on in a bathroom that was above the laboratory. And the water started running, it dripped down, and he caused about, sorry, the camera's going down. I think he said he caused about $2 million worth of damage from a couple of drops, falling on some boards and shorting them out, because they said, the boards, the boards they were using were not mass produced. These were development, and then they're like, yeah, this little chip right here is over $1 million. A lot of this stuff was like handcrafted, or, in the sense, obviously, there's not a guy soldering it using equipment, but, it wasn't being mass produced yet. So a lot of the stuff, is actually quite expensive before it's mass produced. So I remember going through, and I'd be scared to touch anything, like, having a tripod with him, like, holy shit, don't bump into this, I don't want to get, obviously we're insured, but it's still a lot of money. And yeah, it was actually amazing. A lot of times, I met a lot of engineers there, electrical engineers, well, all types, because when I was seeing how they make these computer chips, I didn't know. I thought it was quite a cool process. It seemed more to me like chemistry than anything. I'd see these giant ovens and I guess when they're talking about it, like you got a board and we're pretty much like printing in layers, but we're using light to make the patterns and stuff, because obviously they're these transistors they have in them. I think they said there's something like 8 nanometers in separation. I don't know. I mean, honestly, the technology is absolutely crazy. I would not trade my job, I think, for anything, because apart from the freedom, apart from not having anyone really telling me what to do. Obviously, I got these guys like, hey, you got to go back, you got to do this, you missed this, you missed that. But it's not like, I know most people complaining about the 9 to 5. I used to think, I'm like, dude, you guys are working 8 hours. What's the big deal? I'm like, I'm working 12, 16-hour days sometimes, I've gone some days where, I work 16 hours, and then all of a sudden I got to drive 8 hours somewhere else, and I'll just, I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to pull an all-nighter. And, but no, you know what? I forget sometimes that I got the freedom to actually not have a boss behind me, a manager telling me, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. So, I wouldn't trade that for anything. But also because of the type of things I get to see, when I did those AMD ones, it's just, I'd say that was one of, honestly, I wanted to just grab my phone and start recording stuff. I'm new to this YouTube thing. My wife's always been pushing me to do it, so I said, hey, you know what, we'll see where it goes. If somebody's interested, somebody likes listening to this kind of stuff, cool. If not, well, it is what it is. So when I was going through the server rooms, I was like, I just want to grab a video, I just want to show my wife, I don't want to show any, I don't want to post it anywhere. I was like, I just want to grab a quick video, because my wife, she loves that kind of stuff. She's like, oh my god, it's so cool. Like, my phone is full of just little random shorts where, my wife, she's originally from Russia. She's from Russia. She's got a very Russian, thick accent, and every time, I mean, she loves this country more than anyone else I know. I'd say she's more patriotic than most people around here, and so she always loves to see when little clips of the scenery. Every time I pass by a cow, she needs to see a video of the cows and stuff. And well, yeah, I remember going to that place. I was about to grab my phone, and I was just thinking, I'm like, this entire building is completely under surveillance. These guys are probably going to come and kick me out. So, obviously I didn't do it, because, they make you sign non-disclosures. There's certain things that can't talk about, certain things that can't, because, it's a business, multi-billion-dollar business. They got to keep their secrets. And I remember at the Longmont location, I believe they were renting out one of their buildings to Lockheed Martin, and security contractor, like, if you to scan that building, you need to go through background checks, and yeah, it's a whole process. Fortunately, I have my people that I work with, they help me out through all that, make it a little bit easier. I try to just do my little section, and they deal with their stuff. It's just like any business, you got your one guy doing this, other guy doing that. But it's I heard a statistics once, something that most people, obviously it doesn't count for everybody. I'd say as Americans, or as anybody in Western culture, we have the benefits of making good money, being able to travel around and this and that. But I think statistic is that I think it's like something like 95% of people I might be bullshitting the numbers. Don't quote me on it. I'm not sure, but I know it's a very high number of say that most people do not move away further than 20 miles from their home their entire lives, or spend most of their time within this this little circle, and never really get to experience the world. So in that sense, I've always been lucky to be able to see the world. When I was 25, I had a girlfriend that I traveled the country with. In my younger days, I had some issues, substance issues, and thankfully, I've been clean and good for the last 8 years, doing what I gotta do, to stay up. And we had taken a trip across the world, started in New Zealand, beautiful place, when I went through there, I felt like it was Jurassic Park. Going up there, we're driving up from Melbourne, Australia, all the way up to Cairns. I think it's like 5,000 kilometer drive. Just seeing all the cities across the East Coast. Went through Asia, through Europe, ended up in South America, and sometimes I take for granted that I have the means and my family's always supported me to being able to see the world, because unfortunately most people they won't get to see it, and a lot of times when I meet people, I notice everyone they have their little bubble, they have their people, their loved ones, they draw a circle around them, that's their life, and I said I'm fortunate to have more than that, to be able to meet so many great people, and I'd say it's given me a unique perspective. I think I'm 30, I'm turning 35 next month, and I'd say I've had more life experience than many people that live their entire lives just sheltered in one place. I mean, hell, I'm sure a lot of you guys even see it. We become hermits, especially with DoorDash and all those other things. I got neighbors. I live in LA, not by choice, because my wife likes to live there. Honestly, if it were up to me, I'd move to the middle of nowhere in Texas somewhere, get a ranch, get a couple of cows and horses, and just live my life off the land. But since I'm on the road all year long, I always say it's like, it's my wife's choice, because she's really the only one living there. I'll go in for a couple days, in and out, in and out, in and out. So but I got a lot of neighbors that I swear I've never seen these people more than the only time I ever see them is when they go to their doors, pick up their groceries from somebody dropping off and going back inside. And I think to myself, do these guys ever go out? Do they experience anything, or are they just, it seems like a miserable existence to just be, sheltered your whole life. There's so many amazing things around. I mean, heck, right now I'm, on the I-80 traveling through Wyoming. 28, I'm pretty close to Denver, across through there. And, the sights around here, they're gorgeous. I couldn't imagine living that sheltered life. It's a beautiful thing. You got one life, it's pretty short, and I try not to take it for granted, even though sometimes I get in my depression, I get in my funks, but I try to live my life by to do as much as I can while I have time. I'm not old, but I'm starting to get to that point where I'm actually worrying about my health. I'm sometimes I'll get a chest pain, I'm like, oh geez, am I having like a heart attack, or my back's hurting, my knees are hurting. It's part of the the aging process. But usually when I was younger, 18, 19, 20, I felt indestructible. I don't drink anymore, I don't do any of that kind of stuff. But in those days, I really didn't care about my health. I just say, ain't nothing gonna happen to me. But when I was 23, or when I was 20, I had quite a shock. One of my brothers died, and it really got me to think, life's too short. Your day can come anytime, any moment, and well, I'd like to be able to experience as much as I can while I have time. So I'm gonna leave it there because I'm starting to rant a lot, and